What's up, everybody? Campus2Canton here. We are talking recruiting rankings tonight. Yeah, it is August 17th, 2023. We're talking 2024 freshmen. It's early, but if you are in a C2C league, a CFF Dynasty league, any sort of Devi league, you are always looking for the next guy up. And that is what we're here to do tonight. Austin Ace here with the crew of the official. We've got Matt, we've got David, we've got Alfred. Guys, thank you for joining me here tonight to kind of go over our grades. And the launch of our grades on the website is going to be here over the next 24, 48 hours. So you guys can go in, dig into what we have done so far, and kind of pick it apart. You guys are already working on this in the official, so I don't want to, recreate the wheel here. You guys have been giving out your thoughts on the 2024 recruiting class for the past few months now. But I do think kind of having a summit to sit here and talk about sleepers, talk about guys that you think are overrated, and kind of give our thoughts as a group on the different positional classes is really, really important. And Matt, I want to come to you first, just because I think you are the guy that at least when I post in the chat is most vocal to tell me I'm right or wrong. So I want to come to you, and I want to just get your overarching 2-minute thought essentially on what this class is overall. Are we talking about a strong, wide receiver group? Are we talking about a strong quarterback group? What are we looking at here across the 2024 class as a whole?
Yeah, so I think pretty strongly it's receivers overall, including tight ends. I think the tight end class is phenomenal. Definitely a lot of guys we're going to be looking at this year, but the wide receivers in particular, I mean, we have three like really, really high-end stud talents in Mika Hudson, Jeremiah Smith, and Mylan Graham. All of us are going to have those guys, ranked differently, those three. The services are all consistently in on Jeremiah Smith as number one. Then it's kind of mixed up everywhere else for all the other services. But even outside of that, I think it's a really, really strong tier two. A lot of high upside NFL types, and even some pretty interesting CFF targets I've been looking at as well. So definitely the wide receivers, the tight ends, running backs. I've been saying it over and over again. I just don't like the class really in terms of just the pure NFL upside. I don't see too many guys that are like, hey, I think he's going to be a starter once he hits the league eventually. And then quarterbacks, we've got 3 or 4 pretty interesting guys, and then I think it drops off pretty fast.
David, I want to come over to you here because I think you and I are skeptics at heart. I think you and I kind of tend to look at these things through an interesting lens. Where are you overall with this class? And I don't want to give a specific position, but I think just generally speaking, across the skill positions here, what are we looking at for 2024, and really especially compared to 2023? Because I think anybody watching this video is very familiar with that class at this point. 5 pretty good quarterbacks. We've got a handful of running back, wide receiver guys that we like. How does this next class compare to this one?
I think part of my negative sentiment regarding the quarterbacks in this class is probably because we were spoiled the last class. I think the 2023 QB class could be really, really, really strong. But there's some good players, some good quarterbacks in this class. But I think for the most part, yeah, like there's like 4 or 5 guys that I can see being like potential NFL starters. After that, I'm just pretty much like looking for guys I feel like could produce pretty highly on the college side. So quarterback definitely drop off from last year. But I pretty much agree with all the sentiment that Matt kind of talked about. Like, the running back class is pretty weak. I listen, they're just juniors too. And I know Greg Biggins kind of talks about this, especially at the quarterback position. the guys can take a really big leap from junior to senior year. So, some guys will come out of nowhere, as they always do. So I'm expecting guys to improve overall on their senior film. Maybe check some of the boxes as far as production goes and stuff like that. So right now it looks a little weak, but I think it'll strengthen as we get through the senior year.
Alfred, I want to start this question with you real quick before we hop into some more specifics, but I want to open it up to the group as well. You talk about kind of where the recruiting services are on some of these players versus where we are. And I think sometimes we're simpatico. I think sometimes we are different. How much does and for anybody not really familiar, we give grades. They range from a 1.000, which would be perfect. The day that someone gets a 1.00 with us is the day I retire. I don't think that's ever going to happen. So we kind of weight it depending on what the position is and things like that in our final rankings. Alfred, looking at the services, looking at what we have, how do you kind of weigh those things? If the service is really like Jeremiah Smith, for instance, or some of these other guys, Dylan Raiola is another one, I think, where we're a little lower than what the services say. How do you kind of juggle that as you're watching a guy and saying, this is there's hype here, but the expectation may not meet what reality is today before that senior season? And you're muted.
All right. I really try to be service ranking agnostic, especially when I start my process. When I do my initial grade, I really try to just see what I'm seeing and evaluating what I seem to look at. And then I will say over time, sometimes if I realize like, oh man, I am the only guy who doesn't see something in the particular player. So I take a lot of what David says, what Matt says. I do the official with them every single week. And if they're consistently, drumbeat on a particular player, and I'm like, why aren't I seeing this? And on top of that, every recruiting service seems to agree or whatever, I'll start to question it. But really, there's no formula. I don't really bake anything in to my rankings. Like, oh, this guy started as a 5-star everywhere, so I have to like him. Because we know 5 stars bust. 4 stars bust at a tremendous rate. It's a bad hit rate in general. And so I feel like, we have a different system when we evaluate things differently. And I don't mind being off. But when it's way off, Jeremiah Smith's a good example. I still watched him again today, and I still just, at least the things that I look for, like, I just don't see a transcendent looking player to me. And the buzz is that he's the next Julio. He's the number 2 player in the entire class as a wide receiver. That is unusual in and of itself. And at least on 24/7 composite, I think. And I'm trying, man. I'm trying to look and see, what am I missing? I'm trying to be think that I'm wrong. And I bumped him up today a little. I gave him some consideration in a couple categories, but I still don't know. So anyway, that's a long way of answering questions. I try not to take the recruiting services. These are my rankings, and I actually trust David and Matt a little bit more on some of these things than I do the services. But they do see these kids in person. And I think that does matter. And sometimes things show up in person that you can't see on a highlight tape or whatever. So, but basically, there's such a heavy bust rate, no matter where you look, that I think if you're different, you could be doing something right, actually. So, and so far, our rankings have kind of shown that a little bit. So,
Matt, I want to ask you the same exact question. And for the record, for the haters in the comments, my top button is not buttoned. So you guys, can go away now.
I would say I weigh it probably a little bit more than Alfred does. I definitely look at it. My opinion varies on each service. Each of them have their own, strengths and weaknesses, we'll say. I'm definitely more of an on 3 guy myself. I think Charles Powers is probably one of the better evaluators, in the space in general. So I definitely, if there's like a huge discrepancy, I'll consider what might they be thinking that I'm not, or what, vice versa. So it really depends. I obviously am not afraid of taking big risks and ranking players high that aren't ranked very high. I've been doing that for a while now. So uh, yeah, I definitely consider it though.
I would
David,
like to chime in real
go
quick
ahead.
though
Go
and
ahead.
say that
I will say, Alfred, I think you are the one who discredits the services the most. If I had to,
maybe
and
I
that's
have way
not a
too much
bad thing or
confidence
a
in
good
myself.
thing. It's just an observation based on the year and a half of us doing this.
And I would say to piggyback on what Matt said, interestingly enough, I don't really question it if I find a lower ranked player that looks great, checks all the boxes. I trust myself and our team to find the underrated guys at a pretty good clip. What I really question is when I'm the only one that's not seeing a guy everyone else likes. When I'm fading an obviously good player compared to everyone else, that's when I really am like, what am I doing wrong here? And I question a lot more. But I really don't question that much when I feel like I found a lower rated guy who I think is really good. So I don't know if that makes sense, but those two things I view a little differently.
David, bring us home here. Do you have any thoughts on? I know you're kind of the nothing matters eat Arby's guy amongst the group in terms of aligning where the services are, where with you are, and where you are, and where we are. How do you kind of put those pieces of the puzzle together?
I mean, I definitely consider where they're coming from, and I do still hedge to some degree. Like if I was in Alfred's shoes and I was really struggling to see with Jeremiah Smith, I'd probably still just jam him into tier 2 and just be like, yeah, he's probably pretty good, like just because everyone loves him. But like, I'm still refining my process, and we're still waiting on these previous classes that we graded already to see how they actually do. So it's really hard to. This whole thing just takes a long time to see how guys are going to work out and correct their mistakes. So while I'm like refining my process until I feel like completely confident in it, like I'm going to continue to hedge a little bit. But hopefully I work towards not having to do that anymore. So, but it'll probably be a year or two, until I feel like completely comfortable with my overall process.
I know you guys have talked recently on the official about gaining the information on, is this player, for instance, Cornell Tate, it is apparently a savant, which we can't gather from watching him play, but it sounds like the Ohio State staff thinks he is. So there are things still that we can chart, and that you guys are doing an amazing job calculating and kind of figuring out that maybe aren't necessarily always accessible to us. I want to share. So for anybody looking at this is kind of how we calculate everything behind the scenes. I'm going to share my screen here tonight, and we are going to kind of run through how we look at the positions individually in terms of just, what each position is looking at here. So here is what we see behind the scenes. And you can kind of see all the positions there. I'm sharing my screen here. We have what's called our recruiting hub that breaks out every player. I do think, although we have never officially said this, I think a tier 1 player for us is above a 0.8. That's typically basically a 5-star for us in our rankings. I think anything in the tier 2 is kind of a 4-star. And then tier 3 is kind of, those lower 4 stars, upper 3 stars. As we kind of sift through this, you can see, just looking at this, that wide receiver group. I mean, just the tier 2 continues on for miles here. But I do want to start with the quarterbacks, where last offseason we just talked about there are 5 very good quarterbacks. We only have one tier 1 quarterback here, and that's Dylan Raiola. David, I actually want to come to you first. Without giving us the Eat Arby's tagline, what exactly are we looking at here with Dylan Raiola as a guy that has been getting a lot of hype. But I think overall, we as a group are saying, let's pump the brakes a little bit here on a guy who is good, but maybe not transcendent as a quarterback prospect.
Yeah, he's definitely good. It's just to what degree at this point. Obviously, we know he finished probably like runner up at the Elite 11. He's very talented. A pretty good indicator. He only started playing quarterback as a freshman. Because his dad was like a center in the NFL. He was playing football, but he was playing in the trenches. So he didn't decide to play quarterback until he was a freshman. So he's only been playing quarterback a few years. He's got a really strong arm. I think he's just like, I don't know about the athleticism at this point, really. I think it will improve. We talk about rushing so much. I feel like I talk about it too much at this point where it's getting annoying, but it's just like for fantasy football, I think it matters. And I feel like he's just like a little bit heavy footed and stuff like that. So I usually prefer a little more nimble player, but I think he's got a really big upside. He's got a pretty crazy arm too. So like, I think he has like a 90-mile-per-hour fastball as like a freshman or something, because he's also a baseball player. He throws from like different platforms, stuff like that. So, currently I actually think Sand is just more refined at this moment, but I could easily see Rayola like passing him up.
Matt, how do you juggle those? A guy that went out there and won Elite 11 versus a guy that maybe, performed well there, but is maybe a little more toolsy than a Julian Sand. How do you mesh those things together, and where do you have these top quarterback prospects ranked compared to one another?
So I'm actually the only person that has both of them in my tier 1, I believe. I just barely bumped Sand up. There's a pretty close, point gap between the two. For me, Sand, as David said, definitely much more ready to go at this stage. And going to Alabama, that quarterback room is pretty ripe for taking unless they get a big name transfer. And he can honestly, if things don't go well, he could be a second half of the year starter potentially, year 1. And then Rayola going to Georgia, obviously fantastic spot to be in as well. Both are on pace to be first round picks in the NFL draft. That would be my expectation. Rayola obviously has a bit more to go. As David said, the rushing upside definitely is not quite there. And his Elite 11 performance is really what dropped him down for me a tiny bit. He was very up and down in some events. He didn't come up great on the breakaway ball score data. He wasn't even in the top 10 of that, which the breakaway ball score data is just for reference. So the combination of ball velocity and release time, just to show generally who has the best arm at these quarterback events. And Rayola wasn't even in the top 10, which definitely makes me a bit more suspicious of him. And just the overall up and down performances at the Elite 11.
Alfred, how do you feel about the top a handful of quarterbacks? Is Rayola your number one? And if so, kind of talk about the guys you have behind him, and if not, kind of explain your top handful of guys, I would say, here in this class.
Yeah, Rayola is still my number one. And Matt, I'm curious, do you know that ball score? We feel like he's got really good velocity. Was it the release time? Because he does have a tiny bit of a windup as well that I think maybe would have held him down. Do you remember?
They only released the top 10 scores, so
just the actual score, not the components. Okay.
No.
Well, Rayola is a guy who on tape. Well, first of all, you only really have a sophomore reel that's available. You'd have to watch a junior game, go find a full game tape or something like that. And so, it's hard to evaluate what happened last year. Obviously, the best team in the country, back-to-back national champions, thinks he's pretty good and gave him, is making him their main quarterback in the class, although they're taking 2. I have the same issue. I do have the same concerns David does. And, that Matt does as well. But I'm struggling to put someone ahead of him. I just think it's a QB class with a lot of question marks. I agree that Sayan is pretty safe. I just question a little of his arm strength and if he's got like a eventual NFL talent. At the top of these rankings, we are evaluating for future NFL talent and not just if they're going to be good in college. And so that's what kept Sayan down a little bit for me. Neither of them run very much. And then it's just a grab bag after that. Some unrefined guys who are athletic. It's a tough class to get super excited about. I don't think I would even be taking Raiola in 101. And I know in our last mock, Matt did not do that. So, or Matt did not take him 101. I do think there's enough questions there.
I wouldn't take Raiola 101 in this class. I understand positional value, but I don't feel as good about him overall. If we're looking at this QB list, obviously Raiola and then Julian Sayin is our kind of consensus number 2 guy here at a 0.770, and 0.8 obviously is kind of the delineation for tier 1. I just want to kind of list off the tier 2 guys here. We are going to obviously turn this into a podcast after this, so just so people have an idea here. Dylan Raiola number 1, Julian Sayin number 2, and then we have Aaron Nolan number 3, who's going to Ohio State right now. He's a 0.742, so a kind of a mid-tier 2 guy. We have DJ Lagway at a 0.734 going to Florida, and I think that's actually an interesting one that we can discuss. Luke Kromenhoek, a tier 2 quarterback, headed to Florida State, a 0.719. We have Miles O'Neill, who's going to Texas A&M. This is a guy that kind of came out of nowhere in the process and is now viewed as a 4-star when really wasn't in that range at all going into the summer, quite honestly. And then Walker White is a 0.703, friend of the show, coming in as the 7th ranked quarterback in our group and the last tier 2. I don't know, David, I don't have the individual rankings in front of me beyond the kind of consensuses here. Are there any players that you're interested in specifically as kind of, not obvious top players, but guys that you think can develop into, at worst, good college quarterbacks?
I guess I'll mention Jakari Williams, and this is a bit of a squirrely pick because his passing efficiency is dreadful. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's really bad. But I do think that his mechanics looked a lot better. Like, a lot of my opinions are based off of like summer clips and stuff. Like, these guys are training really hard during the summer. And so his mechanics look a lot cleaner to me. I'm projecting that his accuracy and stuff like that will be sufficient enough. But the reason why I like him is just, he's got a 72% rushing market share, which is just that's like the highest I have in the database right now. He's just very shifty, and you can see the athleticism on the basketball court too. He plays above the rim, and I think Syracuse is just a good spot where they always kind of have like these good running quarterbacks that are just like average at best passers, and they all put up good fantasy points, generally speaking. I don't even, off the top of my head, Garrett Schrader, I don't know, Eric Dungy, some of these guys. So I just think, I'm assuming that the system will be similar. I don't know if you guys know. I know they lost Robert and I, right? And it's
so the guy stepping in for him is his quote unquote protege. He's followed him around back the past couple years. So presumably it's the same offense. Well, it remains to be seen.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if that's Jason Beck, is it?
It is, yeah. Not okay. Tim Beck, for anybody that is upset about that. Yes, it is Jason Beck.
Okay. Yeah, so like, assuming that the system stays the same, I mean, we'll see. Obviously, we can update our grades and stuff based off of like how offenses look this year, but I'm assuming it'll be similar. So yeah, I just think he's a guy that has really, and they have no one in that they don't really have anyone, and they don't recruit quarterback very well in general. So it's just like I don't really see him getting leapfrogged really. So it seems like even though I don't think he's a very good passer at this point, I think it's actually from a college fantasy perspective, I think it's a pretty safe play.
And can you just name that name again for us real quick?
Oh, sorry. Jakari Williams, Syracuse.
Okay. And where do you have him graded, David, overall here? We have him as a group 0.687. That's pretty high tier 3. So I think, when you're getting to that range, you're less concerned about NFL potential per se and thinking about what they can do in college as a producer.
Yeah, exactly. Like my tier 2 is generally like guys I think have a shot for potentially like day 2 draft capital. But Jakari, I have him at 0.67. He's in my tier 3 right now. I don't know. I don't really see him. I don't think he's going to improve so much as a passer that I decided to put him in like tier 2 or anything. Like we'll see how he looks as a senior, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be sticking in tier 3.
Matt, who do you have just as kind of a name to note here at the quarterback position?
There's two guys that I'm kind of stuck between. I can just go over both briefly. I think.
Please do.
Will Hammond, quarterback going to Texas Tech. He came into the late 11 as sort of an underrated guy, one of the last invites in, and he stole the show for me pretty much. I mean, he consistently performed super well in each event. He may not be the highest upside guy. I think he's got a requisite arm, though, good size, going to Texas Tech with great offense. I think he could be, a pretty early starter there and be highly productive for multiple years. And he also had pretty good rushing upside as well, 700-yard rusher. I think, NFL ceiling-wise may not be as great. Maybe he's like a Ryan Tannehill type, or if it's rushing holds up, maybe even like a Daniel Jones. But I at least like him for the fantasies or the college side and his safety at least there. And then my second pick is Christian Martin, who I know you like as well. I brought him up to you a week or two ago. Committed to Maryland. Very underrated by the services right now. I think he's got a plenty big arm, and he's a pretty good athlete as well. Fantastic production. Just won the Virginia State Championship. I just think he has a ton to like there, and that Maryland offense is pretty quarterback friendly. So I think he can get developed there, and day 2 upside, I think.
Hammond is not a guy that I personally have graded yet, but I have heard good things from you guys. Alfred, do you have one name that you can kind of toss out here? You're not allowed to say Walker White, who is, I know, friend of the program.
Yeah.
Not allowed to say Walker.
He's ranked high enough, top 10 guy for us. But no, I'll go all the way down to the last name on this sheet, and I didn't realize if he made the cut here to be listed. But, Samaj Jones, I think, is a very fun-looking player. The one thing,
where's he headed, Alfred? Sorry.
So he's going to Cincinnati.
Okay.
And at least at the moment, I know at one point Penn State was on his trail, which I'm glad he's not going to Penn State because there's too many quarterbacks at Penn State right now. But, he's listed, I think On3 has him at 5'11", like 216. He's listed other places I've seen him 6'1", 210. I think the weight is probably legit, 210, 215, but the height is the thing that could be limiting. If he's really 5'11", probably, difficult to project a whole lot outside of college, but although we've seen it recently. But if he's like 6 feet, 6'1", that could be a game changer in terms of how he's viewed as a prospect over the next 3 years. And he's very quick, a dangerous runner. That's always going to get my attention. But I think his arm is huge. Now, is it the best, most refined arm in the class? No. But he's got the talent to get the ball in plenty of places that a lot of other QBs maybe couldn't. So it's a very projectable grade on him. But I'm pretty excited. And I think, like we've talked with some of these other guys, Cincinnati, I mean, Emory Jones, they brought in Emory Jones and Evan Prater's now at like wide receiver. And then their guy from 2021 or 2022 maybe. I liked him. The dude from now I can't even remember his name. He was from Nashville and played for Trent Dilfer in high school.
Luther Richardson.
Luther Richardson is like, I don't know. He's like disappeared.
I think he's dead. I honestly don't know what happened.
Hopefully not. All right, so, but he like entered the portal, but then never came out. And I don't know if he's listed on the team roster right now. So like their QB room, I mean, the top two guys before they brought in Emory Jones are possibly no longer quarterbacks on the team for one reason or another. So I think he could come in and start, or at least, in the first 2 years, maybe year one.
Is he better than Brady Drogish, which I think is the next question? And,
oh yeah, Matt.
As somebody who has been banging the Drogish drum this offseason, I would be very upset if we end up thinking Samaj Jones is better. But I'm a big Drogish guy long term.
I don't think I was a huge Drogish guy, but I know that he has his fans.
Fair enough. So that's the quarterback position here, and I think overall it seems like consensus is that if you want to compare it to 2023 class and even probably the 2022 class, probably a little bit worse there. So if you're trading picks now, looking to the future, you're maybe not looking to acquire a quarterback there. Let's head to running back. And I think running back is interesting because I think of all of the positions, this is the one that is most diverse amongst the group here. I don't feel terribly weird saying that. I'm actually shocked just looking at the rankings here. We don't have a tier 1 player, and I don't think that's surprising. We don't think this is a particularly there will be players that emerge, but we don't think there's anybody that's kind of setting themselves apart from the rest of the class. But we do have just 12 tier 2 guys here. The highest at a 0.753, so pretty far away from that 0.8 that we're looking for. And the top guys here, David Eziamume, who is the 30th ranked running back-ish in the 24/7 composite. Cameron Davis is there as well. We have Quentin Martin heading to Penn State. Johan Cardenas, who's currently committed to Vanderbilt at 0.743. Jordan Marshall at a 0.733. He's committed to Michigan, I believe. Nathaniel Frazier just committed this past week to Georgia, 0.732. Keedron Young at a 0.726. Frankie Arthur, who is Adrian Peterson's younger brother. Is that the brother? Yes. Yeah. Is the connection there?
Like the AP or Georgia Southern AP?
Just a guy named Adrian Peterson. No, I think as far as I know,
there were two. Remember the one from Georgia Southern?
The Bears.
Yeah.
As far as I know, it is the Adrian Peterson.
Okay.
It's his brother at a 0.719. Wow. The last couple guys here that we have, Cameron Jones, 0.715. Taylor Tatum, who according to a lot of the services is the RB1. We have him at 10th at 0.709. James Peoples headed to Ohio State, 0.708. And then Kevin Riley, the last kind of tier 2 guy at 0.701. I think we're kind of all over the board here as to who likes who. And I think that kind of shows that there's a clear lack of obvious top tier talent. David, who do you like in this running back class, and are there any guys that you think could rise after their senior year? Because we are still missing a year, in fairness.
Yeah, I mean, Cameron Davis is my RB1 right now, it's weird. I feel slightly uncomfortable with it just because he plays quarterback and we don't really see traditional handoffs and we don't really see a whole lot of pass catching in game, bowling in camps. So it's a little bit dicey. But this class feels pretty weak overall, to where I don't think there's a ton of opportunity cost. Like I don't feel too nervous, like I'm totally missing out on somebody else. The Ezio Mume, so I'm just seeing these grades for the first time. I guess I'm a little bit surprised. I do like him. He's my running back 12 right now. I think it was just the fact that he really hasn't had a whole lot of run. Like his production's really he's split with Benjamin Hall and some other guy who's pretty solid at North Cobb. They always have a ton of talent there. I think it was just I wanted to see I just want to see a little more between the tackle stuff. I thought he was a very deliberate runner. He he doesn't like fake anyone out, like, you know what I mean, like, which is fine. That's like, he kind of reminds me of Jace McClellan a little bit with his running style, like very deliberate. He'll get he's always going north south pretty much, and a good pass catcher. So I think that's interesting. But I think it's kind of a free for all in general. Just do whatever you want, like, you know what I mean. Like I don't know. I just think, yeah, overall it's relatively weak, but there's a lot of big guys too. Like, I'll just touch on a couple more here. Like,
Please, yeah.
like Cameron Jones is interesting. Just I think like going to UCLA is a really good landing spot for him. Just in that, you know, Chip Kelly run offense there. He's just a massive guy. He's got pretty good feet for a big guy, and he's pushing like 240 pounds, which is pretty rare, I think. And he looks like he can catch the ball if they decide to do so. We saw Zach Charbonnet get, you know, he got like 40 targets last year, and, you know, like kind of like dump offs and screens and stuff like that. So it's like you could see him doing that. You could see him in that role. Like I can picture it. But yeah, I don't want to get too long-winded, but yeah, I think there's nothing too crazy with the rankings, I don't think, overall.
Matt, I know you've been a little bit critical of our Eziamume grade. He is not, for the record, my top running back, but he is my personal RB2. This is a guy that has kind of played a bit part, I guess, in that North Cobb running back room. I don't know, kind of make me feel better about this running back class. Give me just some assurances here, because
Not
this
going to
is
do that.
not looking good. I mean, the highest grade's a mid 4-star in our system, essentially.
I think grades wise, I'm probably the lowest on anyone here in the running backs for this class. So you're not going to get too much jolly good feels out of me. Let's just say.
Fair enough.
Yeah, with Mume, I was watching full North Cobb games at the beginning of last season because I was big into Benjamin Hall at that point. I do like him. He's my RB6, I think, my RB5. I have a low tier 2 grade on him. It's just the way you have him graded, both of you. It's Alfred especially. That's like where I had Cedric Baxter graded last year.
Yeah, Alfred's too high on him.
And
yeah,
0.79, but 0.79. That's like people had Haynes last year. Like, it's just too much. He's a linear runner. He's a good receiver, physical guy, great physique, good athlete, not crazy good athlete. So there's a lot to like there. It's just he's not this. He didn't start on his own high school team last year, and he's the best RB in his class. Like,
what kind of year does he need to have in 2023 for you? You said he's your RB6, but I mean there's some room for growth here in terms of raw grade. What are you looking for this year? What would bump him up into a really attractive option for you? Because I think if you're talking about a low tier 2 guy, I mean those guys are pretty expendable on C2C rosters overall.
I mean, I'd like to see him be a bit more dynamic of a runner. As I said right now, he's definitely more of a straight line guy. He's not really shaking people. He's got some power to him, but it's not like he's out there hulking people over. At the moment, I think he's just capitalizing on. I think he's a 10-7 100-meter runner. If he has good speeds for his size, but not and he's not this crazy athlete where I think he's going to take him far like a Cam Seldon. Like, he's not nearly that. I think in our database he's 60th percentile, 70th percentile, which is fantastic. Don't let me take that away from him. But it's just he's not a dynamic runner at the moment. He's probably not overly refined of a runner either. We don't really get to see that as highlights. He's lining up he's lining up in line at tight end at times. So I do like the versatility though, but it's just I don't see this overwhelming running back talent. I do see a good athlete though.
Matt, I need to ask you because I think I am by far the highest guy here, and I on Quentin Martin, who's going to Penn State. To keep subtext out of this show as much as I can, I will, but it sounds like he is very much an NIL guy, which worries me about any player at any skill position. But a guy that basically broke the receiving scale for me, he got a perfect grade for me as a receiver, as a running back. That just, it makes it very hard to bump him down the list here a lot. I have a tier 1 grade on Quentin Martin. What did I do wrong here that I have arrived at that conclusion? Because we have him as a 0.745, so I have obviously done something wrong.
Well, I think I am the second highest person on him currently. I have a grade in 7.6s. My RB2 in the class, so I do really like him a lot. As you said, the receiving, fantastic. His agility, his movement skills, fantastic. I didn't see him doing a lot of the traditional running back stuff, kind of opposite of what I was saying with Ezio Mume. I'd like to see him run between the tackles, do some of the dirty work, which he doesn't really do. He's kind of a very finesse runner at this stage. Extremely good mover, for a player of his length, I think, of his size. He's taller running back, between 6'1", 6'2", being listed as high as 205 pounds, which is great to see bulked up a bit. And he was a pretty good athlete. In the database, he's currently a 56th percentile, I think, but going to Penn State, one of the best strength and conditioning programs out there, I'm sure he'll be a fantastic tester when his time comes to the combine. But I think at the moment, it's just, he seemed like more of a wide receiver at this point than a running back almost, and more of like a kick returner too, just open field stuff. I just want to see him, get down and dirty a little bit more.
Alfred, give me your. I don't want your general thoughts, but who are you high on in this class? Who are you low on in this class? And kind of tie a bow on this, relevant running back discussion heading into their senior years.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would probably just echo what a lot have said. I like what David said. Do whatever you want. I mean, I don't think that there is, you're not going to be egregiously wrong, at least based on what we're looking at right now. Just pick a guy you like. I have bumped up the heavier guys to the top of my list at least 200 pounds. I'm not chasing too many guys that are, 185, 195, because they'd have to be elite in some other areas like agility or whatever. And that is just not really, that doesn't seem to exist in this class. So I'm bumping up the heavier guys. I think, one guy that I feel like I guess I'm a little higher, I'm definitely higher on than Matt. I think David likes him, is Nathaniel Frazier. Interestingly enough, Matt bumped him down because he's going to Georgia. I bumped him up because he's going to Georgia, because we're just like looking at that, prestige a little differently. At the high end of my picks here, I'm valuing NFL upside over college production. Now, at some point, you do want college production. He'll probably always split some time, but like a DeAndre Swift who did the same thing. There are other guys. James Cook did the same thing, and now we're looking at him as like, he's a sleeper for the NFL this year in redraft. So I think he could be that type of guy at Georgia. And so he's pretty high on me. And then I'll throw a wild card down there at the bottom of the screen. Another time going for the last guy here. Kewan Lacey is one of my favorite kind of 3-star guys in this class, going to Nebraska, I believe, unless that's changed. I think it's Nebraska. Should have opportunity there pretty quickly. Very fun player, very tough player in the way he plays. He's extremely tough. He never gives up on a play. He's also fun. First few plays of his highlight tape, he's like, giving a guy a peace sign as he heads to the end zone, a couple of high fives in there. He's just like aggressive and a very fun player, and he meets requisite size and speed, and he's going to have some opportunity. I think he could be a nice sleeper in a pretty good system for running backs under Matt Rule, if I remember correctly what he did at previous stops. So I like Lacey quite a bit as a sleeper running back in this class.
It sounds like, just looking at the grades that we have entered here, he is probably a borderline tier 2 guy overall. Let's hop over to receivers, because I think this is where I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think this is where we all think kind of the money is here in the class. I think no matter who you talk to, Micah Hudson, Jeremiah Smith are both players who are top 3 or 4 in the class, regardless of position. You've got Mylan Graham in there as well, going to Ohio State, who we all are high on to varying degrees. I think we do all really like him. The tier 2 here is just enormous. And I do think this is typical of the wide receiver position, but I think specifically for this year is deeper than ever before. Matt, I want to come to you here because you have watched. I don't know. Have you watched 500 receivers yet in this class, or are you slacking? Where are we at
I'm
here?
slacking. Only 200.
Okay, 200 receivers in this class.
Graded.
What? Give me the temperature of the 2024 freshman wide receiver class as you see it entering their senior seasons.
Yeah, I think it's a really fun class. A lot of high upside guys. I think the top of this class, especially, as I talked at the beginning of the show, it really shines. These top 3 guys I have graded higher than any wide receiver in last year's class. So I think that just goes to show. And last year's wide receiver class was very, very good too. Like that's nothing to not be happy with. They're a fantastic group. But I think the overall skill set of these 3 really stand out amongst the rest. And then just going to the tier 2 here, I think there's just a ton of high upside guys like Mike Matthews particularly. I know someone that you aren't as quite as high on. Me and David both like him quite a bit.
I'm not
fantastic athlete.
Yeah.
Well, we can get into it if you'd like. I think he's a better athlete than Perry Thompson, and he's going to a better system.
That feels very targeted, Matt. That feels very targeted.
Where could that come from?
I don't like that. No, that's fair. I actually do want to get to Mike Matthews as a guy that I think is kind of a linear athlete, but I want to talk about some of these other top guys we have first, and I do specifically want to talk about Mylan Graham because we do have a pretty broad ranking overall of him. Matt, you are the second highest on him. Bruning is the highest overall, but like he's going to Ohio State, so Bruning, I'm ignoring his ranking. No, Alfred is technically the lowest. I have him a 0.795. I have him basically on the borderline of 4 and 5 star, and Alfred has him as a 0.794. So that's the lowest grade on him. Everybody likes him.
What's keeping him out from you?
Level of competition.
That's fair.
Can you sympathize with me on that?
Yeah, I agree. But you also have to consider he put up stupid numbers playing with an awful quarterback. I charted 2 of his games. His quarterback and his coach his coach was putting him on go routes. I think a third of his routes run were just goes, and his quarterback could not throw more than 30 yards. So he's just wasting him out there, and he was still able to put up like 1,600 yards, double-digit touchdowns, insane production. So I don't think you can really knock a guy for playing small school when he is going out there and doing the most, statistically. And then, going out to camps, he just, shows up there as well, playing against better competition.
For the record, I have not been inserting my opinion into this show too much. We're 44 minutes in or 45 minutes plus. I have him graded very similar to where I have Brandon Ennis at this point last year. I think that's a pretty good player. Pretty good range. I think there are holes you can poke a little bit. Like you said, there also are answers to them. For instance, Brandon Ennis last year as a junior had to play quarterback because their quarterback went down. It's an unperfect prospect, but you recognize that the upside is there and the situation is fluid. And so maybe at this time next year, this is a really stupid take, quite frankly, on him. That is basically exactly where I had Brandon Ennis last year. And Alfred, I want to hear from you a little bit as well, because we have him. I'm shocked, to get a guy this identical on our grades, but without looking at each other is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's I have him ranked lower, I guess, on a number, but he's still he's actually just recently bumped to my wide receiver 1 personally.
You don't have any 0.8 receivers?
Not yet. Okay?
What the heck?
I don't know, man. I just didn't get anybody into the 80s. It's a matter of the grading scale. It's not that I hate I don't think about
always the scale.
I don't have I got to get a guy in the 80s.
Yeah.
but I should probably change it around. But I will say that, like, what I love about him, he's got almost a perfect score for versatility. I love that. Play strength, toughness, he got a little ding that might be holding him back from because he's just like smaller, and I'm not sure he can necessarily win a physical battle, but that's not a huge deal.
He is being listed up to 185 now. Just throw that out.
That's honestly great size, and I will say, like,
185.
Not that I'm worried about it, but I think like that was probably a slight factor in my grading as well. Yeah.
And then for depth chart, I had to give him a very bad grade. We do grade depth chart, and like anyone going to Ohio State, like, you just can't be excited about the depth chart. I mean, yes, the cream does rise to the top, but that was a ding, which, prestige would be perfect, but the program prestige is perfect, but the depth chart's tough. But yeah, 4.5 out of 5 in almost all athleticism metrics. Like, he's a really good player. He's just barely not a 5-star according to our rankings, but he's my favorite receiver in the class.
David, I want to ask you kind of just your overarching thoughts on kind of the top receivers. Is there a guy that stands out for you? And if so, why? Why do they stand out to you amongst what we think is a really strong class overall?
I think Micah Hudson has the cleanest profile. He pretty much checks all the boxes. Like, he's like a 4-sport athlete, 21.4 miles per hour. Just a really good crazy body control, just makes some wow catches. Good. Honestly, I don't know. He could be like, I don't know. His ceiling could be like Odell Beckham, maybe like 90% of Odell or something like that. But he kind of reminds me of him. But I have the same tier 1 as well. I have the 2 Ohio State guys. Cam Coleman's kind of interesting. He's kind of a projection. He started out playing running back early in his career, and he switched over to wide receiver as a freshman. And then he was his production isn't great to this point because he was splitting with Carmelo English, who committed to Michigan. But like, he's got like a 6'9" wingspan. He's springy. He tests really well. I think he's like top 12 in our athletic database for this class. Just got to kind of refine things up. And he's like really young for the class, so I think it's okay to project with him a little bit. Obviously, we want to see more refinement as a senior, and more production as well. But I do think he's got I think there's a pretty good ceiling there. I saw some people were saying kind of like a George Pickens maybe, or like I don't know, like a Devontae Parker maybe, if that's a little like less exciting, but still I do see like an NFL future with him. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to take up too much time here.
I mean, I think talking about the wide receiver class here is, we've been saying for the past 6 months that we think this is the meat of this class overall. I do just want to list off kind of where we have the tier 2 guys here for anybody listening. And then I do want to hear what you guys think about this group outside of the names already mentioned. Cam Coleman heading to Texas A&M, like David just mentioned, at 0.768. Bryant Wesco, guy that I really like, headed to Clemson, 0.765. Draylon Miller. Is he actually committed to A&M? That is the
yes. Now he is.
Okay. 0.753. Aaron Butler, who's headed to Colorado. He's a bit of a two-way guy, but figures to play wide receiver, 0.751. Perry Thompson just flipped to Auburn from Alabama, 0.748. Mike Matthews headed to Georgia, 0.741.
Tennessee.
Oh, he is Tennessee officially?
Yeah.
I messed that up. He's from Georgia. Okay.
Yes.
My bad. Mike Matthews, 0.741, headed to Tennessee. Terrence Moore goes by TJ, 0.737. I actually don't have my grade entered in yet. That's going to go up when I enter it in. But he is headed to Clemson, a guy that I like quite a bit. Ryan Wingo, uncommitted, but it sounds like maybe Missouri. I don't.
Was it a
exactly
prediction or a
moment, yeah.
commitment the other day?
It was not a
prediction.
commitment. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It was a crystal ball for Missouri. Yeah.
Yeah. Wingo. He's uncommitted, but sounds like maybe Missouri, Tennessee, kind of the teams in line with him. Tyseer Denmark, 0.724. I don't know where the hell he's going. Zion
Penn State.
Thank you. I actually did know that now that you say that. Zion Kearney at 0.717. Keon Barry Johnson. I know nothing about Keon Barry Johnson. I'm not going to lie. I have about 35 receivers graded. He is not one of them. Jonathan Paylor, 0.714. Aaron Hampton, 0.712. Nigerian Tuggle, 0.707. Mezio Bennett, 0.705. Jeremiah McClellan, who just committed this week, I think, to Ohio State officially. 0.703 is kind of our last wide receiver. So 19 wide receivers that are tier 1, tier 2. Like that's pretty crazy. David, I don't know. I mean, just can you talk about any of these guys and just say why maybe you like them personally?
Yeah, I will. Let's see, who should I touch on? Some of these guys let's just talk about Mezio Bennett just because he's a fun player. I think like his intangibles are just off the charts, and this is something I'm looking more at this rather than just like film and production. I'm trying to incorporate that. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but just listening to his interviews gets me fired up. Like this, he loves blocking. Like there is some risk that I could totally see him playing defense because he's so aggressive.
He's an absolute dog.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, he could play like a nickel slot, like a safety type role. I mean, he could definitely. So there's risk in that respect, but like, yeah, I mean, he's a dog. I like dogs. He's got a pretty he's not too tiny or anything like that. Like he's got pretty good length for being like he's probably going to be a slot receiver, or he could probably play some Z maybe, but most likely a slot. But he's got some pretty wild plays. I think like his first reception is like pretty incredible, like diving one-handed catch in the end zone, which really stood out to me.
It's like 3 minutes into his junior tape too.
Yeah, the first
3 minutes are him just
all
absolutely destroying defensive backs.
Yeah,
for the record.
True.
It's a lot of blocking. It's like you almost question like, is he going to be used too much as a blocker at some point? You know, like
I was watching and I honestly almost hit the point where I was like, okay, can this guy like actually play wide receiver? Like what? And then it flashed to it. But I just watched the first 2.5 minutes legit are just him pancaking people.
I will say that's like a perfect fit of the type of receiver I imagine like South Carolina though. Like that's it's going to be gritty and grimy and just toughness. That's what I associate with a lot of South Carolina football. So I think he fits.
Sorry to step in there, David. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. You guys, that was pretty much all I had to say. Like, there's flashes of route running, kind of like maybe more of like whatever you want to call like a gadget type player, but he can get yak and stuff like that. So he's very fun. Let's see if there's anyone else I wanted to touch on. Ryan Wingo is a little bit of a perplexing one for me, and I did stick him in like the very bottom of my tier 2, just based off his like size, athletic profile. There's like some semblance of like a Treylon Burks type player. I can see that.
He's kind of smooth.
Yeah, I think he's smooth, and I think there was like apparently he ran like a 4.37 at some camp. We kind of adjust those numbers a little bit because they're just too aggressive. I think we adjusted him to like a 4.44, but yeah, I mean, he's for his size, I think he's pushing like 215. I saw in some spots. So like real big, thick, strong dude that is smooth. Just like the charting that the charting was terrible. I don't know what's going on with this charting, but like he had like a 43% contested target rate, which is in high school is just really, really bad. I don't know how, and he had like a 19% drop rate, and this is on like a decent sample size. I think it was 69 routes run. I can't remember the exact target amount, but so that part is slightly concerning, but like there's obviously good things. Like he does special teams. He does get like They use him as like a running back a little bit too, so he's like kind of like he's got good versatility. I feel like so he's like an interesting player. It's just like how far can he go, and how much does he have to refine his game?
I will put it on record now. I am the highest of the group on Wingo, and I'm not like overly high on him. I have him at a 0.756, but I think the athletic profile is very intriguing with him, even in a pretty loaded wide receiver group overall. Matt, any names in this group? I know you and I think our two battles for this class are going to be how high should Cam Coleman be and how low should Perry Thompson be, in some sort of order there. But any names in this group stand out to you?
Yeah, two guys that I would like to bring up are first Tyseer Denmark. I think. Am I the David? Did you end up grading him? Am I the only one that graded him?
I got Denmark
at. David's actually pretty close to me.
Yeah.
I think I have a grade on him personally that I have not entered into our group for what it's worth. I have a 0.6353 grade on him.
Oh, that's awful.
Pretty low. Sorry. When that goes into the machine, it's gonna hurt him a little bit.
You should rethink it before you put it in. He's arguably the most refined receiver in this class. I think he's not crazy good athlete, but I think his skill set is super well rounded. He has the same head coach that Marvin Harrison Jr. had, and he called Tyseer the most complete wide receiver prospect he's had, I believe, something along those lines. Brian Hartline was also very invested in trying to get him. He compared him to Ibuka, which not that caliber of athlete, but I like the sentiment. He ultimately ended up going to Penn State. I think he could honestly start year one in the slot there. I think he has good inside-outside versatility. He's lightning after the catch. I mean, he's some of the best open field shakes in this class, I think, at any position. Just doesn't have the lightning speed to go along with it. Would probably be the big knockback there. But he also has pretty good hands, wins contested. I just think he has one of the cleanest profiles in his class. A super good production score. Knocked out the park in charting. So I just think there's a lot to like with him. And then the other guy, Kyan Barry Johnson, who I'm no longer have the highest grade on because of Alfred. But I have been touting him
from you.
Yeah, he stole him from me, basically. It's okay. I've been touting him for a little bit now. He's got crazy ball skills, really very elusive, kind of a slight build at the moment. But going to Wisconsin, there's a chance he could end up playing slot there, which is the big attraction to him, I guess, because he has a very good chance of being a CFF stud. While I'm not as quite as high on him as Alfred now, is because he was the wide receiver 2 on his own team last year, which is not great playing for. But it was Amarian Stewart, who's committed to Michigan. He's also a very highly rated wide receiver recruit. So, it's not that bad. He's not an awesome size adjusted athlete, like 30th percentile, and he has no experience in the slot up to this point. But outside of that, awesome profile. He's at the top of my tier 3.
You just dug this guy a grave, and then you said, "But I kind of like him." So those kind of players are like really fun, though.
Well, I had to explain why, because my grade's lower than what his average grade is here, because Alfred has him very, very high.
I do just real quickly want to defend myself on Tyseer Denmark. I dinged him like crazy for the athletic ability. I thought he looked like a really bad athlete, quite frankly. But I did in his pros put loosey-goosey play style, player who has a bit too much wasted movement for my liking, but very nice flexibility, allows him to bend and explode out of breaks and change direction quickly in the open field. Charts well at a lot of our metrics, but I am not a huge fan overall of his current route running ability, although I see the tools. That was my summation.
I disagree with you on the route running. I think he's ready to go.
That was
route running is such an art, though. I think it's hard. I think everyone's gonna have a little different perspective.
And 57th percentile athlete in the database, so not that bad. Better than Perry Thompson.
I'll fight you on Perry Thompson. Alfred, who do you like in here in this class, or any other players you want?
I'm gonna give some props to Mike Matthews. He's been a guy I was very, very low on. I went back, took a look today. I've been listening to Matt and David both kind of, talk about him in a positive light for months now, it seems like. And I just never really went back. I don't know exactly what to say I don't. He's the kind of guy. I agree. He does appear to be a little linear, Austin. I think everyone would agree that, like, off the line, he's not doing a bunch of fancy dancing and things like that. He's not. He's not gonna wow you with, just sparkling moves in the open field and things like that. But what I did notice looking again today, and he had a play the other day, first game of the season, I think, that was just spectacular. And then watching David's behest, watching his basketball highlights, what I've come to kind of realize with him is he seems to have really incredible body control. And the reason I think possibly that he doesn't appear to be doing all this amazing tap dancing and everything is just because he's incredibly intentional, and he doesn't need 5 things to go to fake someone out. He's actually very good at right angle turns, but it looks like he didn't hardly move, but he shifts in a different direction and can alter, his trajectory, and it makes it easy to kind of deflect and get open, I believe. So still working on him. I mean, he's not like top 3 for me or anything like that, but I definitely bumped him up. I think he's got really good body control, just really forward and backward. He plays safety, change of direction. It's not spectacular, but the effect that it has on the defender, I think, is still really good. And he just had a really awesome, like, smooth criminal, like, toe tap stop and slide on that play from this past week, and then changing up field. I just think he might be more dynamic than I was ever giving him credit for. And if you watch his basketball highlights, you see that body control as well. Then I was going to mention Barry Johnson, but Matt said everything. I just think I watched him again today, and I'm like, I can't find anything I don't like other than he's listed at 165. So that is certainly a concern in terms of, like, overall upside, but he's going to be nasty in that Longo offense. And then Bubba Hampton, friend of the show, came on. He's my kind of guy. Does it all, special teams. Did he ever commit? Is it Texas?
Texas, and there's a good chance he's playing DB.
Oh, we have talked about that.
Yeah.
I really like his skill set, but yeah, I guess if he plays DB, obviously that becomes irrelevant here. So I'll stop talking at this point.
I will. I've been playing the role of host. I've been kind of withholding my opinions, but I do hold my wide receiver evaluations a little closer than I do some of the other positions. Just because I've generally had success at the position over the past handful of years. But I just kind of want to read my Mike Matthews evaluation and why I am not a huge fan of him, even though I have him as kind of a low tier 2 wide receiver. So I basically said, looks to have very good long speed on tape. Like we are talking not Marquarius White, Squirrel White ink reincarnate, but I think we're getting close to that. I think explosive athletically. But I do think there is an inherent lack of feel for the wide receiver position, just flat out, quite frankly. I don't see him. If you go watch Jonte Cook and how he kind of works a DB, and then you go watch this guy and watch how he works a DB, I just think they're not even in the same universe in terms of how they acquit themselves in that role. I don't think he does a good job of selling his routes out of breaks. I don't think he wins out of breaks consistently. I think right now he's winning based sheerly on his athletic ability. I think he lacks any real semblance of a release package. I think there's excessive footwork in short areas. I do think he's at his best when you let him just plant his foot and go and kind of beat a defender to a spot. But I think you can get a lot of players that could do that. So that is just my negative opinion on Mike Matthews, quite frankly, kind of considering him a more linear athlete. I have not been a huge fan, and that's not to say he's a bad player by any stretch. And obviously we go with our consensus here, but he is a guy that I, at least going into his senior year, have a hard time believing I would draft at all based on what it seems like current cost is going to be, just based on current profile. I do just want to touch on tight ends real quick. I actually haven't watched the tight end class at all, but I know Davon Mitchell is a guy that reclassified, and you've got some other pretty solid tier 2 guys here as well. I don't know, guys, educate me on the tight end class. David, can I come to you first? Is there anybody here that you like out of this pretty big tier 2 group?
I think the guy that I'm probably above the field on is Michael Smith. We had a tight end show recently on the official, and I kind of just binge watched these guys real quick. And he was like one guy that like really jumped out to me. I thought like he was super athletic and had awesome body control. Thought he ran routes pretty well. Just looked like really explosive and just looked like he knew what he was doing. I think none of the services really have him too high. I think my theory is either I'm bad at watching film, which is very possible, or just like he has a boring name, Michael Smith. Just throw him in the middle of the tight end rankings, and just So I don't know. I have him tight end 2 right now. After kind of
he's
rewatching,
good. I think he's really good. I like Michael Smith as well. He popped for me,
and he was doing like kick returns or punt returns or whatever it was too, which I thought was a little unique from a tight end. So I kind of like that as well. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these guys, I'm pretty much. Oh, I see Gavin Hoffman's in there. I actually haven't graded Gavin Hoffman yet, but he's really athletic, and he's going to Iowa, so he's probably pretty good. Yeah, I like a lot of these guys. I think I have Jaden Riddell number 1 as well. Going to Georgia, obviously they're just like a tight end factory at this point. And I don't know, I'll let you guys kind of comment on the other guys.
Yeah, I mean, Riddell, the biggest freak of this class, or the freak at tight end at least, but he's 86 percentile data athlete in our database. Where'd he go? Carr Nelson might be slightly higher now that I think of it. He's a high jumper, 7-foot high jump, one of the best in the country at as a 230-pound guy. It's really, really impressive. Going to Nebraska, he could definitely be an impact there. I'm the high guy on Davon Mitchell. I'm surprised I haven't gotten anybody else on board with him yet. He's going to be extremely young in the class. He's very athletic, and I think he has probably the best overall game as a tight end of this class because he can block, he can play in line, he can win one-on-ones just with his route running. He's not, I wouldn't say he has dynamic speed, but he's a very explosive, bursty athlete, and very good after the catch too. Who else can I touch on here? I could do Odom too. Going to Alabama, he plays solely X receiver at this point, 6'5", like 220-ish. Not a blocker at all. He's definitely going to, have to go through the ringer there at Alabama as they teach him to play in line, I assume, unless they just say screw it and tell him to play wide receiver, which I could see possibly happening.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing for him if they just say screw it, play wide receiver?
He's a pretty, he watches basketball at least. He can soar. He's a big jump ball guy, big dunker. I don't know if he has necessarily the speed or the flexibility to really cut it out at wide receiver. So maybe kind of stuck as a bit of a tweener. But yeah,
Bama keeps taking these guys. I feel like these tweener receiver tight ends. Maybe they're just hoping somebody sticks.
I would say he's even further because those other guys do at least play some in line. Like he plays 0 in line. He plays solely X wide receiver. So he's gonna have a lot to learn. But he definitely is a very good physical talent at least. Playing high competition against Georgia and produced pretty well out there.
Alfred, any final thoughts? I haven't watched a single tight end yet, so I'm going to refrain from this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think David called him out. My guy was Gavin Hoffman, who, some of the building blocks are there, like freaky athletic going to Iowa as a tight end. I mean, that's not that difficult to be interesting. But I think the tape backed it up. I really legitimately liked him a lot. I told the guys when I first watched his tape, like I found my Andrew Rappelier for this class, but turns out they all kind of like him too, and we all liked Rappelier as well. But it was a lower rated guy that we put all the way up there.
Hope you don't lose him in the program. That would be really heartbreaking.
Lord knows I'm going to. The other thing is that all these top tier tight ends, the extreme, like Matt just said, I think is Caleb Odom. You watch these guys, at least their highlight films, and they are all playing mostly X receiver. I mean, it's probably something of where the position is going, where the offenses are going, but like Riddell, Odom, Landon Thomas, some of these other guys that are all rated very highly, they play a lot of wide receiver, like legit lined up out wide receiver. It makes it a little hard. I mean, I don't know. I find it is a physical position, and these guys are going to need to block to endear themselves to most coaching staffs. Now, I think there are some that can think out of the side of the box and play these guys at like in less traditional ways and maximize their abilities. But like, I wonder what is going to happen to these guys who like they're listed as tight end, but they are not playing tight end in high school. And we just heard Amari Niblack at Bama entering his second year.
You are such a provocateur with bringing Amari Niblack in here, expecting me to buy that.
No. I'm not saying to buy anything about it. I'm saying Nick Saban was recently, he was glowing about him, but he was basically saying that he was completely not ready when he showed up. And he's like trying to become a blocker. He's trying to figure out how to play the position, as a whole. And I just wonder if that's going to happen to a lot of these guys, unless a coach is willing to just say, screw it, I don't need you to block. But some coaches are going to want them to be blockers and inline guys and be flexible and do all the things that a tight end has to do. So I'm just wondering where some of these guys wind up, in college, because I just think they're going to be playing a different position than they do in high school for a lot of these guys.
Well, thank you guys for hopping on here, giving us summary of our thoughts on this class as we enter the high school season here for 2023. If you want some more expansive thoughts, please go listen to the official either on our podcast feed or go check it out on the YouTube channel. Here, Alfred, Matt, David, you guys do just, quite frankly, amazing foundational, groundbreaking work in the recruiting space, especially as it relates to college fantasy and beyond. So thank you guys for hopping on here for a little bit, giving us a flavor for this class. Our rankings will start posting to the website within the next few days. We are currently looking at getting those launched. So you'll be able to go in if you are a member and check out where we have some of these guys fully. And if you want any more information, please DM us. We're always happy. I don't want to speak for anybody to fill in some gaps for you. But yeah, Alfred, David, Matt, thank you guys for hopping on here with us. And looking forward to some more episodes of the official here as the season rolls on. So thank you guys very much for all that you do as kind of foundational work here at C2C. As always, guys, Austin, Alfred, Matt, David, we'll catch you guys on the official later this week. Thanks for hopping in.